said. I had met Caramandi 2 or 3 times previously and had had several brief discussions with him. But this trip to Maryland was to be the first of several long sessions in which he would explain how the mob worked and how he became a part of it. Caramandi, it turned out, was hiding in plain sight. He was on a very long federal leash, a fact that would surprise and shock certain people back in Philadelphia who assumed that he was unreachable. That was hardly the case. He jogged 3 miles every day on the beach, alone. He had a membership at a local health club where he would show up a couple of times a week for workouts and steam baths. He was a regular at certain restaurants and bars. He was a tourist named Joe who was down for the summer, and while he never got particularly close to anyone, he became friendly with several bartenders and waitresses who liked his easy, outgoing manner. He moved around town by bus or on foot, dressed casually, always wore sunglasses, and seldom was without a cigarette. During 2 days of interviews in August, he called to check in with his federal watchdogs on a regular basis, but other than the phone calls, his time was his own. I had to wonder what his fellow tourists would have thought about rubbing shoulders with a Mafia hitman, and how they would have reacted had they known that the man who was sitting at the bar or at the table near them in the restaurant, or with whom they shared the elevator or a stretch of beach, was an individual marked for death by a despotic mob kingpin who that very moment was rotting in a prison cell in Philadelphia. Nicky Scarfo's world was coming to an end, and it was all because of this sun-tanned tourist in the Hard Rock Cafe t-shirt. One of the movies featured on the hotel's pay TV channel that week was Wall Street, starring Michael Douglas. The movie is about greed and ambition and how it powers the American economy. Greed, for want of a better word, is good, says Douglas at one of the key points in the film. Greed works. In a series of interviews that began in Ocean City, Caramandi would say much the same thing. Greed and ambition are the tools that the mob uses to advance its interests and to subvert and co-opt society. Money and power are what make the Mafia America's second government, a violent, corrupt, and unaccountable national force whose influence stretches from the boardrooms of corporate America to the boardwalk in Atlantic City, and from the corridors of City Hall to the drug-infested alleys of the ghetto. Forget any fancy or idealistic notions about the men of honor who make up the mob. If they existed at all, they died a generation ago. La Cosa Nostra today is an amoral organization put together to make money, no matter the manner, for its bosses. Murder, money, and corruption were the things Caramandi talked about over and over again for the next 12 months. A gifted raconteur, he was often charming and entertaining as he described the scams and swindles that propelled his early life. Some brought him hundreds of thousands of dollars, others left him empty-handed and frustrated, but each seemed to bring him closer to the mob. By 1980, after 25 years as a thief, con man, and flim-flam artist, he was a recognized mob associate. 2 years later, he was a proposed member, and after taking part in a series of murders, he was, in 1984, formally initiated into the bloodiest and most violent Mafia family in America. 2 years after that rite of passage, however, Nick Caramandi found himself a target of Scarfo's paranoia. And so he began the process of taking the family down. In appearances before more than a dozen grand juries and in testimony at 11 different trials, Caramandi destroyed the Philadelphia organization he had sworn to defend with his life. Not since Joe Valachi shattered the Mafia's time-honored code of silence in 1963 had a mob figure provided such a detailed and up-to-date account of the way the organization operates. While the Philadelphia family was relatively small, there were 60 made members and nearly 200 associates, it was strategically positioned within La Cosa Nostra. Its boss sat on the 7-member Mafia Commission, dubbed the Mortgage Company by local mobsters, and dealt frequently with the leaders of New York's powerful Genovese and Gambino organizations. Philadelphia's status within the Mafia underworld was also enhanced by the fact that its orbit of influence extended all the way to Atlantic City. While other families were permitted to operate in the East Coast gambling capital, the mob had declared Atlantic City, like Las Vegas, an open city. The Philadelphia family dominated the local rackets there and had a piece of almost everyone's action. One way to measure the impact of